Hi, everybody. I'm Katina McHenry at the McCombs School of Business. Thank you so much for joining us today on A New Big Ideas. We delve deeper into faculty research happening here at the McCombs School of Business. Joining me today is Eric Chan. He is Assistant Professor of Accounting, and we are talking today about a brand new piece of research that he has recently published. Welcome. It's good to see you.
You too, Katina. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I love your research and I love it for the content, and also I think in the timing of it is fantastic. As we've been going through COVID, lots of nonprofits have been seeing an increase in donations and funding. And so your research focuses on the nonprofit industry. I want to read the title of the paper. It's called Understanding and Deterring Misreporting in Nonprofits, the Joint Effects of Pay Level and Penalty Type. So give me a little bit of a summary that focuses on what the paper is about.
Sure, yeah. So this is a research study that I collaborated with Xingyi Zhang, who actually got her PhD here at Texas and is now assistant professor at Cornell University. And so we wanted to understand sort of the why behind why nonprofits misreport. So we know there's quite a bit of evidence that suggests that nonprofit organizations often inflate their financial performance, obviously to try to attract donor contributions, but we don't really know why. So we know how, but not why. And so we want to dive deeper into sort of what are some motivations at the manager level that would lead them to justify and at the end misreport their financial information.
So what did you guys learn about why they're doing that? So it is true that they have been misreporting, right? So that's one fact that has truth. So what did you learn about the why?
Yeah, so what we theorize is that big picture would be obviously the higher the financial performance, the more likely you get more donations. But at the manager level, we theorize that the pay level may be one important factor that might drive them to be more or less likely to misreport. So what we find is that when a nonprofit pays a manager a low pay, what you get are managers who really care deeply about the mission. So that's their motivation. And how they justify it is quite interesting. So what we find is that using moral licensing theory, that they think back to sort of the sacrifice of the personal wealth, that I gave up this sort of high-paying job, and now I'm working for this low-paying nonprofit. Now I have this moral license to misreport. And then on the other hand, when you have a nonprofit that pays more, managers who care as much deeply about the mission as those in the low-pay nonprofits, they care them as much, but they no longer have that moral license to misreport. So we find that when they paid more, they actually find it harder to misreport and justify doing so.
So let me understand. So one of the reasons that they misreport is to attract more donors. So if they say that they have made less money over a course of time, that is more attractive to potential donors or even company donors. Is that right?
Yeah. So what they inflate is the program ratio. So the program ratio is the ratio of how much money is expenses are going into the mission, so to the beneficiaries, sort of over the total expenses, right? So what that means would be if you have a 75% program ratio, it means that for every dollar you donate, 75 cents will actually get to the beneficiaries. And so all else equal, if you choose a organization, obviously you care about the mission first, right? That's number one. But all else equal, if they have the same mission, you're more likely to give money to the nonprofit that's more efficient, right? That would use your money more efficiently, get it to the right places, right people.
Right. And the nonprofits that you guys looked at in the study, did any of them have an instance where the money that was donated was not going to the beneficiaries, but going to the managers or people at the management level?
Yeah, so we use experimental setting to really understand the psychology of it. Mm-hmm. So our aim wasn't to document that because prior studies have. And so, for example, there was a study in prior research that was looking at a pretty large sample of nonprofits. And what they found was that half of them reported zero fundraising expenses. But then when they looked at the history of their online activity, clearly they had some fundraising activities and events. And so that would be a clear indication that they misreported the fundraising expenses in order to increase or inflate the program ratio. Now, where that money goes into, I don't think it goes into the pockets of executives, so that would be, a little bit aggressive. But I would think that it's just the efficiency, right? So there's more admin, there's more overhead. And so in order to attract more contributions, like, well, let's fudge it a little bit. Instead of 70%, let's get it up to 75 or 80%.
Yeah. So how many nonprofits did you guys look at in the study? And then what were the sizes of the nonprofits? Were they all over the country? Were they large, small? Were they nonprofits that we would know or we would recognize the name of them?
Yeah, so our study really focuses on an abstract setting. So we didn't look at, so we weren't trying to document actual nonprofit managers misreporting. What we wanted to do is create a setting where we get participants, online participants, who would choose into different types of abstract settings, and they get to choose, they get a list of nonprofits, say, I want to represent this nonprofit. And so we create a game, essentially, to capture some of those frictions that you'll see in the real world. Mm-hmm. But we didn't actually capture, what actual real nonprofit managers were doing.
I gotcha. So it's interesting that you talked a little bit about the mission and how the mission made a difference in just the level of pay and why the manager took the particular position in the nonprofit. Because I think with some nonprofits, their mission is something that the managers take to heart, and it's more of a moral decision. So that's a very interesting aspect of the nonprofit that you mentioned. Rather than just taking the job for the pay.
That's right. Yeah. So I think what you get is with different pay levels in nonprofits, you get different types of managers, right? So if the nonprofit pays low, then what you get are people who really care deeply about the mission. So we kind of call them the mission-focused managers. Mm-hmm. But then what we find as a trend in nonprofit sector is that pay level is actually rising, especially in executive level. So a lot of nonprofits are thinking, you know what, we want to get someone with corporate experience, someone who has different skill set. In order to attract those people, we better increase our pay. Yeah. And so what we find in our experiment is that when we increase the pay, we get a mix, right? So you still get some people who care deeply about the mission. Well, it pays more, good, right? That's something extra. Mm-hmm. But then you also get a larger proportion who we call self-focused, who don't really care about the mission, but hey, it pays more. I'm gonna go in and help out as this nonprofit. So they view it as more of a for-profit firm almost.
Yeah. And do you think, since we've been in this pandemic, seems like forever now, but about 7 months or so, do you feel like nonprofits are doing better because we're in the pandemic?
So I think donations are likely going to go down. So in 2019, there is a survey or an index that shows that U.S. is actually the #1 most generous country. And with the pandemic hitting the U.S. particularly hard, we probably get a mix, right? People who would usually donate. So I think the statistics are that every 10 households, 6 households actually gave something to nonprofits. I expect some of that to go down, especially for those who are struggling under the pandemic. But then at the other level, right, the rich who are less affected might feel the greater need to donate, right? So we probably see a balancing act. So we'll see whether we keep that #1 ranking as the most generous country for this year. But my guess is that donations in total will likely go down.
Wow. And it's interesting you say that, because you would think that they would do better. But with the idea that lots of people aren't doing well right now financially, and our economy is not doing well right now. So that makes perfect sense why donations would fall this year. Interesting. Right. Well, if you'd like to read Eric's paper, it is called Understanding and Deterring Misreporting in Nonprofits, the Joint Effects of Pay Level and Penalty Type. And we'll have a link in the video description in the very bottom. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eric. It's great to talk to you and great to get more insight about your research.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We will see you next time on our Big Ideas. Thanks for joining us today.